Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, to our first official episode of 2025, where we'll be here for the duration of the full episode. So to start off the year, we're going to do what we finished the year with, more off-season in content, just like we did for probably about the last 2 months of 2024. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, we basically recap all our best bits of 2024, so that includes some interview clips, that includes some prediction reaction, including some actual unseen bits in there as well. We've got some funny moments, we've got a whole set of different stuff which we picked out over the course of 2024 as sort of our favourite podcast moments. So I definitely recommend listening to that first bumper episode of all the best bits of 2024 all in one episode for you, instead of having to listen back to probably the 3 days worth of recording throughout the course of the year. But looking forward to this week. It's a new year. We're going to start to preview the year a little bit, which we'll get onto a bit later. We'll finish off part 2 of our trivia challenge from last year, and then we will end off with the history. We've taken a bit of a break from the history, obviously being Christmas and the best of 2024 special. However, this will return this week. But we'll kick off, as I said, with a bit of previewing to 2024. And last year we did a dedicated episode towards our season storylines, and we're going to do something similar for this episode. Now I know it's quite a lot earlier on than what it was last year. However, what we've done for this year is we're going to sort of take these more on board. It's going to be 10 things on the podcast that we're specifically going to track and follow throughout the course of the year. Let's get them in early. You know, we've got most of the drivers announced already. Not too much is going to change between now and March. So me and Archie have come up with 5 different storylines each, which we're going to follow as a podcast over the course of the year. And sort of, you know, every month or so, we might give you an update on how these are going and just things that we think are going to be really fascinating to follow throughout the year. So I'll kick off with one of mine. So the one I'm going to start off with is Joseph Newgarden. Now, we've recapped Newgarden's 2024 season quite a lot. You know, he won the Indy 500. That is what he's going to be remembered for. That's more important than the other 16 races. But Newgarden's had a tough couple of years. He was sort of the guy to really topple Dixon in Dixon's real period of championship dominance. And when he won in 2017 first of all and later 2019, it was, okay, this is the guy who's here to topple Dixon. This is the guy who's going to start dominating the series. And obviously he had those 3 runner-up championships in a row from 2020 to 22. And, you know, he was close on many occasions, but never was a real true championship contender on some of those occasions. And then the last 2 years have been a bit more difficult. It was 5th and 21, obviously 8th last year. Obviously, you got the Indy 500 in both of them, but as a championship package, now you feel like Pelot's come in, and now it's Pelot's the guy to stop Dixon or continue that dominance. Newgarden's been a bit lost. And I feel Newgarden's in this a bit of a weird area where we still know he's one of the series' top drivers, but he hasn't really got much to back it up with over the last couple of years. He's been far too inconsistent, far too many errors for a driver of his caliber and a driver of his standard, which has really cost him. So it's in a bit of a weird zone for Newgarden where he isn't really the series' top dog anymore. He's not, maybe he isn't even expected to win the championships year in, year out anymore, but we still know what he's capable of. It's hard to believe, but Newgarden is now 34 years old. So he's obviously still in his peak era, but he's not going to be winning championships for another 10, 15 years. He doesn't have loads of opportunity. You know, with the rising crop, Herta's Pelot awards, that's only going to become more difficult over time. He's obviously his overall pedigree is still insanely good, but now you've got people like McLaughlin and O'Ward. Well, you could quite possibly say McLaughlin and O'Ward are on a very, very similar level of overrating to Newgarden at this point in their careers. So Newgarden's reputation, I feel, has dropped off a little bit in the last couple of years. And I think that's something I'm going to really keep an eye out for this year. And how does Newgarden recover this reputation? 8th was pretty embarrassing in the championship last year, only to just beat out the Alliance Foyt car for Santino Ferrucci. And last season, he was all out of sorts, apart from obviously the Indy 500. We know St. Petersburg seemed to derail him a little bit. But it just hasn't been the last couple of seasons that Newgarden's expected. And is this now a year? This is a chance for him to sort of rebuild that pedigree. He hasn't got many chances left, and he's going to have to start proving that he is one of the series' creme de la creme drivers again.
I mean, he's now had 2 pretty difficult seasons. He was in a position where, okay, he won the championship in 2017, won the championship in 2019, and he was pretty much nailed on to finish top 2 in the championship for years and years. And that, I mean, starting in 23, which prompted going into 2024 this reset where, after he had won the St. Pete race, he was on about, changing his approach and kind of slimming back what he was doing off the track and really just trying to focus on the racing and getting back to enjoying racing. And obviously that kind of ended up getting overshadowed because that win was taken off him and his season was just marred by, having lost those points from St. Pete with the whole push to pass debacle. And then, there was just so much attention on him and he was the guy at the forefront of that whole saga and people were labeling him a cheat and he was becoming this villainized figure, which we've spoken about a lot as maybe not something that he necessarily is relishing. And to be the villain, you kind of have to relish being the villain. So, I mean, it will be interesting to see how much of 2024 really was just hampered massively by what was an unprecedented thing at the end of the day in terms of a driver getting disqualified as the winner of a race. I think the other reason to watch Newgarden, other than the fact that 2024 was so kind of errant and so wildly inconsistent, obviously had the peaks, but I think the one other thing to watch this year is on the successful side. He's gunning to become the first driver to ever win 3 successive Indy 500s. So that is another big thing to obviously kind of keep track of and keep an eye out for when it gets to May. He's definitely one of the key figures to watch for. Yep. So first up for me is kind of one of the major things that came from 2024, but will really start to be applicable in 25, which is Fox replacing NBC as obviously the broadcast partner of IndyCar. And I think there's kind of 2 main strands to it that I see. I think one thing that I think is super important, and we've already seen them, some very good promotional efforts, often kind of entwined with their American football, whether that be NFL or college football coverage, is promotion of the Indy 500. When the Arlington street race was announced for 2026, they were immediately promoting that while the Dallas Cowboys were playing. So that was great. And I think that's a really good early initial sign. But I think it's also really important that Fox promote IndyCar as a whole, because there is this perennial issue that people view IndyCar as just the Indy 500, and these Indy 500 watchers maybe don't recognize that there's an entire 17 race season and the Indy 500 is only one of those races. It's only 2 weeks of that. Yes, it's the most prestigious event, but IndyCar is so special for so much more than just the 500. So I think it's really important that they up the promotional efforts. Obviously, all of the races are now going to be on network television, which is great. And even Indy Next races are going to be televised, even if only on cable, which is, again, brilliant. But they've just got to really keep up the promotional effort. And I think, obviously, the other thing to watch out for is how is viewership trending compared to what we saw from NBC last year. And I mean, NBC last year, there were a mere handful of races that got over 1 million viewers, which is, I mean, IndyCar needs to be crossing 1 million viewers consistently, really, if it wants to properly be growing and maximizing its potential. So I think comparing how the races do this year on network television every week, hopefully with more promotion from Fox, it will be interesting to kind of compare the viewership 2024 to 2025.
My next one is an anticipated one generally, which is AJ Foyt Racing in 2025. Santino Ferrucci obviously returns to the team alongside David Malukas. And look, we've spoken about this a lot, so I won't get too much into it. But we know that's an exciting lineup. Who's going to come out on top between Malukas and Ferrucci? That's a very, very difficult one to call early on. There's no clear favourite driver there. So it's going to be a real dynamic there between 2 very different drivers early on in the year. And obviously we've got the Penske Alliance as well. We saw what Ferrucci can do in that car last season. Malukas should be capable of doing pretty similar. He was doing very good things in the Meyer Shank points towards the end of last year. It's obviously a shame we didn't get to see him in the McLaren, but that seat's obviously going to be looking at Penske ride long term as well. And obviously Malukas in the box seat, but if Ferrucci smashes him out of the park, who's to say that won't be Ferrucci's chance in a couple of years' time? So the teammate dynamic is one aspect of it, as well as the championship aspect of it as well. But Ferrucci was saying that he thinks the team can win races at points next season. I think he said he could win a championship, but that might be made up. But who's to say they can't? Ferrucci had a couple of moments last year where he was certainly in the mix for a podium. Once he got the pole in Portland, and Malukas was running in the mix at times for a Shank team as well, who haven't been really close to winning since Helio won the 500. So, real interesting storyline there. Can Foyt pick up their first win in several years? 2018, I think, was the last one of Sebastian Bourdais. To be a potential first win in 7 years of Foyt, it's one of the strongest lineups in the field of Ferrucci and Malukas, who could quite complement each other performance-wise, which will, I can see both drivers in top 10 standings, and I can see them nicking a win somewhere. So, can Foyt get a win in 2025? It's going to be a huge telling point.
I will kind of latch on to that with my next one, and obviously you outlined Joseph Newgarden as an individual, and I think you could kind of pick out any of the Penske drivers. Obviously, with the factor of Scott McLaughlin, well, if it wasn't for him having the points taken off from St. Pete, he would have been the champion. So he's obviously one to watch. But my second storyline is Will Power, because linking to what you've said there, Dan, you obviously have David Malukas looming. There's a lot of talk about the fact that he may have moved to Foyt, kind of under the guise of Penske, with a view to possibly being Power's heir, because Power is getting into his mid-40s now. And I mean, last season was phenomenal. It was a massive upturn on 2023. Obviously, 2023 with his wife having a life-threatening illness and all of the stress of that, and overcoming that, thankfully, eventually. Obviously meant that 23 was a bit of a write-off, and 24 essentially was the true defense or attempt at defense of his title win in 2022. So 24 was a massive upturn, but pressure is going to be on Power this year because, it's reported widely that this is a contract year for him. He does not have a contract with Penske beyond 2025. So he is going to have to get off to a strong start this season. If he has an ambling start to this season and, doesn't perform as well as his teammates, even if you look at those Foyt drivers matching him, I don't know how probable that is, but if that is the case, then Power will fall under a lot of pressure. Because you have Malukas, this young upstart, now within the Penske camp, given the alliance that Foyt have with Penske. So, yeah, I think that's going to be a massive thing to watch for, because Power is one of the greatest drivers the series has seen. He's the best qualifier the series has ever seen. He came pretty close to a third title last year. Obviously, things didn't quite pan out his way in the end, but he looks like he's not close to retiring. He kind of said that himself last year, but it's just whether he can keep up the form from 24 into 25, because if he doesn't, then it could be his last year with Penske.
Next one I'm going to go on to is Kyle Larson. I think he was our number one storyline of last season, but I think he still deserves a mention this season, because a lot of people, well, now it's the second year thing at BL, it's not as special, but I think this is a huge opportunity for Larson. Last year was impressive. There's no getting around that. People have spoken about it a million times. We know how well he did, but we know he had a few issues. Restarts, pit lane speed. He said before the race, those were the two things he couldn't control. He couldn't control coming into the pits in practice sessions at full race speed. He can't control race restarts. Now he's got that experience. Well, is Kyle Larson almost the full package now? He's got an Indy 500 run already. He was quick in his debut. He's only going to get better from this point here, from an Indy 500 experience standpoint. Obviously, NASCAR's a different side of the equation. They've specifically said that Charlotte is the priority, no matter what the stage is in Indianapolis. Larson has to be at Charlotte Motor Speedway. But, if rain permits and the weather permits, it's a great chance for Larson. He felt he was very unsatisfied at what happened last year. There was a little anger in what he did. It looked like it was, I don't think anybody else was angry or upset at Larson, but he felt annoyed. He felt like a job wasn't complete from last year, even though he led laps towards the end. So it's another good chance for Larson to really have a proper attempt at the double. And I've said this before, I don't think there's many drivers in the history of motorsport who could even fathom completing the double. I think Larson's one of the very, very, very few you could say would have a reasonable shot at doing it. And it would probably be, I think, motorsport's greatest achievement if he could put it off. As a bold take, but to do 1,100 miles in a day in two completely different cars, completely different sides of the country, would be an almighty impressive achievement. And I think now Larson's got that experience under his belt and he knows what he did wrong. I think he's in a great position to really give it a serious shot again.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that is a massive thing to watch out for, because there was so much disappointment kind of at how it panned out in the end last year. So yeah, that's a big thing to watch come May for sure. So yeah, my next storyline is Colton Herta, and I think this is, I mean, possibly the biggest thing to keep track of throughout the season, because, I mean, when was the last time we saw a driver go from IndyCar to F1? Do we have an answer to
that? Board day, I guess, technically.
Yeah, so it's been a long while. So that is something to really track this year. Obviously, with Cadillac making the move to F1 for 2026, with Dan Taurus, who is obviously heavily involved at Andretti Global, leading that effort. Colton Herta has kind of been earmarked by the likes of Mario Andretti as being the main option for Cadillac as one of their two drivers in F1 in 2026. But there is the looming issue, of course, that Colton Herta does not yet have a super license, and he is close by all accounts, but no one's quite sure exactly how close he is. There's talk he needs to finish maybe top 4, top 5 in the standings, I think, to achieve it. So that's a lot of pressure for him. So I think how he deals with that pressure is something to really watch for this year. Obviously, it would be massive for IndyCar in terms of the attention on the series if the driver could move over to F1. Obviously, hinging on the fact that Herta would then succeed when he goes to F1, which is not going to be easy with a brand new team. But yeah, that's something big to watch out for this year. Is can Herta achieve the super license that there's been so much talk about, and ultimately secure an F1 drive?
My next one is Harry McLaren. I feel last year was a bit of an underwhelming year. Obviously, 2023 they went winless. 2024 they haven't been making that step up. What is actually in the news that they've taken full control of the team of McLaren Racing. They bought out the remaining shares of Rick Peterson and Sam Schmidt, so it's now fully owned by McLaren. For those of you interested, McLaren haven't really been making the progress we've expected them to. They think they should be championship contenders now. That's why they've sacked Gavin Ward, because they think they should be championship contenders. And the management structure is now very different at McLaren. So their expectations clearly aren't meeting what they're actually doing on track. We had those weekends last year where they were just slow. There wasn't any explanation. They were just slow. Again, a bit too inconsistent. And outside of Pato O'Ward, they haven't found a driver to complement him. Rosenqvist didn't do it. Rossi didn't do it. Siegel hasn't been able to do it so far. Obviously, Paul Scher was a bit of a different case. Didn't really have the time to do it. But they haven't found somebody to complement O'Ward yet. O'Ward is a superstar who you feel is being a bit held back by McLaren at the minute, performance-wise, and he's stopping them winning championships. But now you've got Christian Lundgaard. Here's someone who I think people do think actually could challenge O'Ward. This is a big test for O'Ward as well, because the road courses have been a bit of a mess in the last couple of years, and Lundgaard is a much more established road course racer, and he's an oval racer. This is Lundgaard's own test on ovals as well, to make clear. He's going to have a huge challenge in how he performs on the ovals. But in O'Ward's case, is Lundgaard the person who could challenge O'Ward? O'Ward doesn't want to lose his top dog status, but you also need somebody who can complement them. Siegel needs to make a step up. His first season was okay, but you really feel 2025, there needs to be a big step up. He needs to be getting the top 10s week in, week out. So it's quite a balance. You need to see where Lundgaard equates. You need Siegel to make the step up, but you need that team to make the step up. It shouldn't be they're winning once every half a season. They need to be winning contenders week in, week out, like the Ganassis and the Penskes are. Rossi and Rosenqvist never really challenged for a race win at all in their McLaren careers. They need people to do that outside of O'Ward. They're a three-car team, but only playing to the strengths of one of their drivers at the minute. So there needs to be a collective step-up in performance, which we need to monitor after the departure of Gavin Ward from the team. Now they've got the stability they lacked for years, or for at least in last year's case. And you see who to make that step up. How will Lundgaard perform? And can O'Ward finally have the package to make him a title contender?
I mean, we spoke about Ward at the time, didn't we? That, you know, it was kind of felt like he was made a scapegoat for them not achieving a goal that was extremely ambitious to win the championship last year, because ultimately they are not a team primed for that yet. They are too inconsistent, and when they are slow, I remember Rossi speaking about this on his podcast, they've not always known why they were slow. So they kind of really have to crack that. And yes, I completely agree. They need to become a team that is firing on all cylinders across the 3 cars and not just relying on O'Ward to do that heavy work.
They don't have a scapegoat now. They can only blame themselves. It can't be Ward. It can't be Rossi or Rosenqvist. They specifically selected this lineup to complement O'Ward, and they've completely changed their leadership team where there is no sole person in the middle. Who is the scapegoat now? They don't have that.
Yeah, I agree. And, obviously, O'Ward can't be too impressed with all this instability. And I think the only kind of saving grace is that he obviously has the link to the McLaren F1 team, which is not an insignificant thing. So, yeah, I think they really need to just start knuckling down with what they have and, try and maintain this stability, because they've just been shooting themselves in the foot. What they've been doing has been completely counterproductive. So my next story is, well, it's an interesting one because it could, across the course of the season, become a complete non-story, but it is the introduction of the charter system, which is the first time we've seen this in IndyCar competition. And so long as there's only 27 cars trying to qualify for regular season races aside from the Indy 500, you kind of won't really notice it that much. I don't think it's very much something that is more for the teams and just to give them obviously this value to their assets and give them long-term security. Where it becomes a problem is, or where it becomes more of a talking point is obviously the 25 entries across the teams that competed last season full time are chartered and they are securely in every single race. There are 2 non-chartered entries for Prema, obviously joining the series this year. If there are more teams other than Prema who decide, okay, we want to qualify for a race, they also won't have charters. And even if this is, say, an Andretti or a Ganassi adding a 4th car for say a Portland or just a random race across the season, all of a sudden the Premas will have to fight with whether it's this one other car or 2 other cars. Between 4 cars, they will have to fight for 2 spots in the field. So that's where it becomes a talking point, I think. So there's not loads to say on it, but just keep an eye out in case teams try and field extra entries.
You'd lead me on very nicely to my final point, which is Prema in general. A lot of big signings. You like the signing of Piers Phillips, obviously worked for RLL for a long time. Robert Schwartzman, very exciting rookie, lots of experience, lots of different cars and very quick in lots of different cars. Callum Ilott, proven quantity in IndyCar, reliable pair of hands. Michael Cannon from AJ Foyt Racing, top engineer. They've got the resources there, but as of recording, they still haven't tested. Rinus VK doesn't think they potentially might not be ready for St. Petersburg. They've got a lot of work to do in just about 2 months now to Prema. So the other thing is how do they perform? How are they going to funnel out? It's not going to be a very attractive look if they're at the back with the coins and the Hunkosses. You want to see them sort of in the upper midfield. You want to see them sort of in the mix for regular top 10s. How they're going to perform on ovals? Obviously, they've only ever done the European system. They're bringing some staff over from Europe as well. So it'll obviously we'll find this out over time, but it's how are Prema going to perform? They have the resources, they have the personnel, but they haven't really been making much progress pre-season, and it's a steep learning curve. And if a car comes to qualify, that's going to be a challenge for them as well. It'll be their first attempt at the Indy 500 as well. Yes, Ilott has got some experience, but he doesn't have loads of experience. They don't have drivers with years and years of feedback on board. So it's a huge challenge and sort of a step in the dark. And we want to see them sort of in the midfield, but we don't know where they'll funnel out. So huge challenge for Prema across the course of the year.
Obviously, Ilott does have experience of kind of building a team up from not very much in Juncos. But yeah, it is a major challenge for them. They've got a very short period now to get on track and get everything primed for the start of the season, which is coming up very quickly. So I think there will be a lot of teething problems through the year, but again, yeah, that's certainly something to kind of watch out for. So, just to kind of finish this off nicely, it's quite a basic storyline, really, but it's simply just the honours of the season, which is the battle for Rookie of the Year between obviously Robert Schwartzman, who is an extremely highly rated young driver who has had a lot of success elsewhere, versus the Indy Next champion in Louis Foster. Foster obviously coming into an existing organisation, Schwartzman to a new team. So that's something to really watch out for. I think that's going to be fascinating throughout the year, to be quite honest. I think they are two very top drivers who will do extremely well in the series. And then, can Alex Palou do the three-peat? Can he win that 4th championship and join a very elusive club? That's a massive story too. Can you get a Herter? Obviously, he had his best season yet, finishing 2nd in the standings last year. He's got the pressure that we talked about of chasing this super license this year. What about the likes of Newgarden, as you speak about, Dan? Can he come back into contention? Will McLaughlin finally make that step that he's so close to making to become a champion? What about Power? What about Dixon? Does he factor in? Awful lot of questions.
Yeah, so as we said, there are going to be 10 themes you sort of follow throughout the podcast over the year. We said we have our content days coming up, so we'll try and get a few of the drivers' thoughts on content days about these topics as well. But we'll make a note of them. We'll come back to them every couple of months and sort of see how they're going on as key storylines we're going to follow on the podcast this year. A nice little bit of previewing in the first official episode of 2025. As we did, though, at the end of 2024, we're going to sort of finish our trivia challenge. We got up to mid or higher last time. So just to recap, Archie was trying to name the retirements from every race in 2024, and I was trying to name the lap leaders from every race in 2024. Rules are pretty simple. Race by race. Once you get one wrong or you complete the deck, which has only happened about once or twice, you either eliminated or you move on to the next race. Simple as that. So we're on to Iowa. I could tell you there were 9 retirements in Iowa race 1. So get your thinking cap on and think of 9 retirements from Iowa race 1.
I think it's these late season oval races where things start really jumbling into one.
Yes, definitely.
I can't remember. I'm thinking like Power into Fittipaldi, but I think that might have been Gateway. So Iowa race 1 was the nighttime race. I think Roman Grosjean retired.
He did.
Okay, so that's one in the bag. Ed Carpenter?
Yes, contact, just like Grosjean.
So I remember that was a really tricky weekend for Carpenter. This is genuinely really, really challenging to remember. Alex Palou.
Yeah.
This is where he had his issue. I'm trying to kind of cycle through team by team. What issues did the drivers have? Connor Daly, I reckon, had a mechanical.
Connor Daly didn't race in Iowa race 1.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he raced in Iowa race 2, didn't he? That is
He
a good... Yeah, I completely forgot about that. This is where I'm getting jumbled up because, yeah.
Canapino had contact at the start, as did
Okay,
Lucas.
so this is where I was getting confused. I think I was envisaging Daly racing for Juncos and forgetting that Canapino was still in the car.
Yeah. Then Malukas also spun on lap 1. Harvey was obviously ill, so just parked it after about 30 laps. Lundgaard had contact. I believe that was at the start as well. He spun similarly to Malukas. Lundqvist had a mechanical. And you were right about the Power Fittipaldi clash. And Carpenter was in that as well. But Power didn't retire. Fittipaldi did.
I was thinking that was Gateway. Okay. I remember what happened to Lundgaard. I think he spun and then the car wouldn't restart. And
then Malukas did the same thing, I think.
I think something along those lines, because this was obviously first hybrid oval race.
Yeah.
On to lap leaders then.
Can't be that many. It was a great Iowa procession.
Yeah, do I give you the number? I think yes. I do give you the number.
Yeah, give me the amount of lap leaders.
There were 2 retirements, 2 lap leaders.
2 lap leaders. Well, McLaughlin and Herter.
Yep.
Oh, that wasn't very hard, but that shows you how disappointing the Iowas were with only 2 leaders on an oval race.
I really don't remember there being so many retirements in that race, though. That is wow.
No, yeah, there were 8, as I said. Well, that was a bit... 9, sorry. That was a bit underwhelming for my first one. Race 2, you had 7 retirements.
So off the bat, you've got Rossi, Kirkwood, Carpenter, and Robb after the spectacular late crash.
Yep, correct.
You see, this is where I'm getting confused as well. I think it was Milwaukee that Newgarden and Ericsson had their coming together. So, yeah, it definitely isn't Newgarden because he had two very decent kind of drives forward, actually, in a race that was hard to pass. As soon as you read them out, I'll probably remember what happened. It's just... I'll guess Graham Rahal. I know he had I think it was Iowa, he had a tyre issue.
No.
But I don't think that caused a retirement.
Fortunately not. Daly had a mechanical.
Okay, so yeah, I just said that in the first race. Because I knew I do remember he had a mechanical on the Iowa weekend. Okay.
Rosenquist was running well, I believe, and he had a mechanical. And then Canapina also had a mechanical.
Okay. Nice.
Lap leaders.
There were 4, slightly better than the day before.
Fowler and Pillow were certainly 2 of them. This is the one McLaughlin got pole for, I believe. So I presume he led a lap.
Yes. So Pillow led 103, McLaughlin led 94, and Power led 51. There's just one more lap leader.
Oh, well, this is someone who cycled to the front on strategy then. Fantastic. This is as you probably guessed, is going to be a pop guess. Alexander Rossi.
Linus Lundqvist led 3. He ended up finishing 12th.
Yeah, it would have been on some weird strategy. There we go. I'll take that, though. I don't think many people would have got that. Toronto. You've got 12 retirements to get.
Oh, my goodness.
12.
Okay. So I'm trying to think who was involved in that crash at the end. I'm Ferrucci and O'Ward, obviously.
Correct.
I feel like Rasmussen was there.
Yes, he was at the start, but yes.
Okay. Ericsson was also involved in that.
Ericsson was involved, yes.
It's hard to know who retired. Who retired and who was involved. I think I recall Rosenqvist having mechanical.
Yep, you recall correctly.
I think it's hybrid. That might have actually been one of the rare hybrid problems. McLaughlin obviously ended up in the wall.
Yes, he did.
Courtesy of Will Power. Canapino.
Yes, yep, he did.
This was the end of Canapino, was it?
It was the end of Canapino, yep.
McElray.
Yep, McElray, yep.
4 to go.
4 to go.
I want to say Robb.
Yes, had a mechanical. 3 more.
Malukas. Oh, no, scratch. He finished 6th. I think he finished 6th in this race.
Okay,
this was
right.
his best finish. Am I right?
Well, I can't tell you, but I say you saved it for the minute.
Okay. As I think he finished 6th. I think this was his very standout race. I'm going to guess Simpson.
Yes, he crashed all by himself at turn 10, I believe was the tricky corner that weekend.
Lundqvist?
No, Lundqvist made it. Siegel and Fittipaldi were both involved in the big crash at the end.
Okay, oh yeah, because Siegel was the one who properly careered into it. Fittipaldi was the one that Ferrucci barrel rolled over, actually.
Yes,
I think.
he was, yeah. Lap leaders can't be many, can there?
Lap leaders, there are 3.
Well, Herta.
Yep, he led 81. Good luck with the final.
Out of 85, didn't he? This is the issue because Kirkwood finished second, but I'm adamant he did not lead a lap because I'm pretty sure he just pitted at the same time as Herta every single time. Rosenqvist.
Dixon led 3 and Ericsson led 1.
Going to say wrong Swede, then I was thinking about Dixon, but I changed my mind. Rookie mistake. Oh well. Gateway, you've got 10 retirements. A lot of retirements at this point in the season.
I will just also say you have a lot of lap leaders for this as well.
Okay.
You have Power, because this was where he had his angry outburst.
Yes, correct.
You have Rossi because he was involved in that.
Yes.
So that's 2. A long way to go. Was this Rasmussen's debut? After he came in for Carpenter, his short oval debut. I can't remember. I also can't remember how that ended. Because because I would say Carpenter crashed, but I think he didn't. Did he run again? I'm going to say Carpenter.
No, he made the flag. He was there. And
Yeah.
he made the flag. Leg collided with Carpenter at the start.
Yes, I remember that.
O'Ward had a mechanical.
Okay.
Simpson crashed in turn 4, if I remember correctly. Ericsson was running really well, then had a mechanical. Rahal also had a mechanical. Kirkwood had contact at some point. I cannot remember it. Well, maybe it was with... No, I'm thinking of Iowa, I think. Kirkwood had contact, apparently. Malukas obviously crashed to power.
Oh, no, Kirkwood was he was that... This was the race where Grosjean and Daly and Kirkwood were all involved.
Oh, yeah, yes. I was thinking
Daly spun and continued. Yeah,
yes.
This is the issue, right? All the incidents are merging into kind of one race.
And Harvey was in the pile-up at the end as well.
Okay, yes, I do recall that as well. Okay, yeah, this is quite challenging actually. So lap leaders, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Okay. Newgarden and McLaughlin certainly led laps.
Yep. So Newgarden led 17. McLaughlin led 67.
I'd be certain Power led some at some point.
Led 117.
Yeah, so he did lead some at some point. Malukas would have led some.
He led 11.
I'm pretty sure Siegel led laps.
He led 8.
I'd say Dixon.
He led 5.
Someone's 6 out of 11. That's pretty good. Now I am not really sure.
So you are missing 4th. You are missing. So you said Dixon, didn't you? So you're missing 4th. You are missing 7th, 8th, 10th, and 11th.
Was Lundqvist on there?
Lundqvist led 1.
Oh, phew. Because there was that stupid alternate strategy, which Dixon, Lundqvist, and Siegel were ruled on, which is why I remember it. So I've got, 4 left?
You do.
I'd say Herta, because I don't know, I'd be kicking myself.
Herta did not lead any laps.
Okay,
Still finished 5th. So it was Power with 117, McLaughlin 67, Newgarden 17, Ericsson 13, Malukas 11, Siegel 8, Rob 8, Rossi 8, Dixon 5, Rahal 5, and Lundqvist 1.
Portland, you've got 1 retirement to get.
Dixon.
Scott Dixon, yeah.
A big crash at the start. Portland, you have 5 lap leaders.
Power
is correct. Yep, with 101.
Out of 110, is it?
Yeah.
Hello, at some point, I'd guess.
Led 3.
Ferrucci was on pole, but I don't think he ever led a lap. Because Power overtook him on lap 1, unless they count you across the start-finish line as leading a lap. Armstrong ran well that weekend. Who came 3rd? Newgarden came 3rd. I'd just say Newgarden led a lap on strategy.
He led 1 lap.
Oh, good. Ericsson ran well that weekend. I said Armstrong. Let's just say Armstrong led a lap.
Led 1.
Oh, I don't know.
So far, you've said Power, Newgarden, Armstrong, and
Hello.
Okay, so you've got P2 remaining.
P2
in laps led. Yes.
Who led how many?
4.
Ferrucci and strategy.
Herta.
All right.
Finished in 4th.
Oh, I was pretty impressed. I got Eric. Did I get Armstrong and Newgarden? I was pretty impressed with. So not Armstrong.
Good effort.
Yeah,
Good effort. That.
Milwaukee won 2 retirements.
I'll be honest. I have absolutely no idea. No, I do have an idea. Was this where Newgarden retired from both?
Okay.
This is the one where he collided with Ericsson.
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
Yep. Correct. Yeah.
I know.
Correct. Right. I'm dreading this.
You only have 5 lap leaders for this.
Oh, I think I remember 4 of them. O'Ward.
Led 133.
McLaughlin.
Led 80.
Lundqvist.
Led 19.
Power.
Led 9. That's the top 4. Well, actually, There's Power led 9, and the next driver also led 9.
He's always Herta, but this is the one his wheel fell off, I think. So, you got him.
It was 22nd place finisher Colton Herta.
Boys.
Of course it was.
I've learned a lesson now. I've learned a lesson. Race 2, you've got 10 retirements.
Wow. Newgarden again.
Yes.
Armstrong was involved with Newgarden at the start after very good qualifying.
Yes.
Daly, I think, didn't last the race after getting his podium the night before.
Yes, correct.
And from here, it's kind of guesswork, if I be honest. So you said there's 10. I've got 3.
10. You've got 3, yeah.
Ray Hall. Was this the angry point one? Where he got,
yes. I think so, yeah.
He got hit by Rasmussen. I'm going to say Siegel.
Yes, had a mechanical.
I'm going to say Malukas, because he had a bit of bad luck.
Mechanical.
Oh, was this the race where there were loads of mechanicals? I seem to remember because it was the second day after after the quick turnaround from the first race. I seem to remember there were a lot of like early mechanicals. I'm going to say no, actually, because Coyne had an alright weekend. I'll just say Fittipaldi.
Yes. Had a mechanical.
Have I said Rob?
No, but he retired. He had a contact.
How many have I got left?
2. A generational performance.
Incredible guesswork. Did I say O'Ward?
No.
But he is a
retirement. He's on there. You got 1 more.
Grosjean.
You're going to kick yourself. This is Linus Lundqvist. He got involved with the crash in the start.
Oh, did he retire from that?
I don't know if he retired from that, but he's marked down as contact for his retirement reason.
I had it in my head that he'd escaped that. That's a shame.
I don't think it was from that, in fairness, but he had some sort of contact later on.
Okay.
Close.
I'm fairly happy with that.
Good.
So Milwaukee race 2, you have 7 lap leaders, 2 more than the day before.
Right, well, McLaughlin.
Yep, he led 85.
I'm sure. Well, Herta definitely led at some point.
He led 43.
I think Power led at some point.
He led 64.
Because that's when the championship turned. I was about to say the start got waved off, but that was when Newgarden got hit. But no, it won't count as a lap. I'm trying to work out if that getting waved off will count as a lap. No, because he would have crossed the line to start effectively lap 1. So I definitely would have counted. Dixon finished second without leading a lap.
Dixon did not lead a lap. So
second.
You have McLaughlin with 85, Power with 64, Rossi with 46 in third.
Don't recall that.
No, I don't either. Herta with 43, Ferrucci 6, Newgarden 4.
Newgarden 4? Oh, because of Pelot breaking down, of course.
And Catherine Legg led 2 laps.
Oh, that's annoying me, Newgarden. Blow. Right, Nashville to end off, you've only got 3.
Weirdly, even though this is the last race of the season, I don't really remember that much. I don't remember any of the leaders' circle cars crashing. I'm going to say Malukas.
No. Rosenqvist had a tyre failure quite early on.
Okay.
Legg spun by herself.
Okay.
And Ericsson crashed by himself.
I was going to say Ericsson. I don't know why. Nashville, you had 6 lap leaders.
Herta.
Herta led 24.
Much less than I thought he did. O'Ward.
Led 21.
Kirkwood.
Led 67.
Newgarden.
Led 54.
No, I don't know.
You are missing 3rd and 6th.
Okay. How many did 6th lead?
8.
Rossi
was 3rd with 32.
Okay, fine. Not the one I was expecting. Because I remember him being on a weird
Failed successfully.
Failed successfully, yeah. So can I round off? They led 8. Oh, this is going to be somebody in strategy. Oh, Malukas.
David Malukas.
Yes, I literally had a brain where they left him out really long at the end, hoping for a caution or something. So perfect, excellent. What a way to end off. I mean, we will count, but we'll give the scores next week because I'm sure you even counted up yours, and we'll have to re-listen to it. So we'll do that next week. But that's a nice way to end off. But for this week, that's all we have time for. Obviously, looking at the season storylines, which we're going to track throughout the course of the season and finishing off our 2024 Trivia Challenge. Hopefully, you played along too. Wonder how many of you got at home, probably kicking yourself or kicking at us, saying, you didn't get this one correct. I knew this one. It was obvious. Well, we're sorry. We try our best. So moving on to history, I'm doing 1970 to 1974. And this week's story is going to come from 1972 and a man named Jim Hercheybees. I probably said that wrong. I do apologise. Anyway, Jim attempted the 500 22 times, but best finish of 13th, which was in 1962, but he failed to qualify on 12 occasions. So he's hardly Indianapolis Motor Speedway legend, but there's a bit of context to Jim's career as such. But one of the times he did qualify was actually 1972. On bump day, he was comfortably in the field, no worries at all. The driver who was in trouble was a man named Wally Dallenbach. He was on the bubble. He was eventually bumped by Cale Yarborough, who's a NASCAR legend, with Yarborough surviving 6 attempts to get him bumped. So then Dallenbach went back out in a sort of a last gasp attempt, but on his 3rd qualifying lap, his engines had issues, which ended the chance of qualifying. This is sort of the last 25 minutes, half an hour. So it's pretty close. People are desperate to get in the field because obviously sort of back in this time, we have a lot more cars attempting to qualify, sort of 20 cars plus won't make the field of 33, so it's very different to how it works this year. Little fun fact, the 33 drivers in the field qualified faster than the pole time from the previous year, so that's how the advances were made year to year in this period of Indianapolis, so a lot of changes were made. Before the gun sounded at 6 p.m, just before, Jim, he brought his Miller High Life sponsored car, obviously the beer brand, to the front of the field, ready to go. But he'd already qualified, so there was no need for him to be here, which was a bit peculiar. So there was a bit of confusion why his car was in the line. Previously, with all his qualifying attempts, he sort of gained a reputation for unsuccessful last-minute attempts, but this time he'd obviously made it. I mean, some fans loved him coming back with his last-minute attempts every year. Some really didn't. It became sort of a bit of a running joke. But in this occasion, his Mallard Roadster reached the front of the line, but the gun had already gone. So why was Jim in the front of the line, not making the clock, whilst he already qualified? He'd done this deliberately. The reason being is because his car had no engine, but instead it had a trough filled with ice and chilled beer bottles to promote his sponsor, Miller High Life Beer. He shared with pit crews, race officials, some of his friends, other drivers. Some of us found this funny, and most of them found them funny. Some officials, as you can imagine, did not find this funny at all. A little bit of a marketing gaffe there from Jim to get his beer sponsor car to front in the queue to get a bit of attraction for the brand. That's a pretty funny, funky Indianapolis 500 story, courtesy of Jim Hercheybees in 1972. Here's to a great year on the podcast. Really looking forward to what we've got in the year ahead. Hopefully many more interviews, many more race reviews, many more guests. We will be working on it, and hopefully we'll have a fantastic season ahead. Really looking forward to what the podcast has got in store. As we said last week, invite people to listen to the podcast, get in touch. Let's build the followership of DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast. Let's help make a community. Let's get as many people interacting as possible and have a perfect year ahead. But for you currently listening, really appreciate you all who listen. Really appreciate your support, and hopefully you enjoy the podcast throughout the course of the year. We're now in 2025, so we're now in race year. So how many days have you got left?
Well, until cars hit the track for opening practice on the streets of St. Pete, it is 52 days as this podcast goes live. We are getting into the half century. We're almost there.
So yeah, sort of not too long to go now. This is kind of good news, but for this time, thanks very much for watching, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.